Hello. Yeah, I just read the part of this book, the half of this book. There are 1 through 9 chapters. Here I already read 1 through 5, so I'm gonna go to 6 through 9. Uh, and a life well cooked. A young boy with a passion for cooking faces change, challenges, loss, and change, but with the support of family and friends, he learns that dreams like great meals take patience, love, and perseverance. So let's go to read 5 through 9. A life well cooked is uh, yeah, so beautiful expression. A story of dreams, family, and the courage to follow your passion by Joshua Seo. And the chapter 1, the center of possibility. The there are the describe the kind of the mood of the story that I can imagine, and then I can smell even through the like uh, garlic and ginger, something sweet that this Jason couldn't quite describe. Uh, he just described through the word language, but I can imagine about so I can touch through this the story. And so let's go to chapter 1, the center of possibility about, and chapter 2, trouble at school. Actually chapter 1, his daddy recommended to study to go to medical school, but he just dreamed he wants to cook. Yeah, well, yeah, that's the chapter 1. And chapter 2, trouble at school, uh, because he wants to attend the uh, cook competition in school, but actually his daddy doesn't want to. So he just imagine that because he cannot practice how to cook in his kitchen, so he just drawing the food, how to make the sauce, how to uh, the control the kind of vegetables. So it is so interesting chapter. And chapter 3, uh, grounded and planning. He just planned uh, and the challenge, the food competition, the cooking contest, chapter 4. And actually he got the win, because you don't know yet about that scene. So I'm just keep going. And chapter 5, bittersweet victory. And then he just best shepherd ever. Even Jason's father stood quietly in the crowd. He gave Jason a small nod. This small nod most, pasture. Jason felt something warm rise in his chest for the first time. He realized something important. Cooking wasn't just a hobby, it was the beginning of his future. And the chapter 5, we bittersweet victory there. He just got his own kitchen. The sign outside the small building read Kimura Kitchen. Inside the restaurant was warm and welcoming. And go to the uh, where he is gonna be a good chef at the Kimura Kitchen, but there are some problem there. Uh, Poor dad, he just uh, picked up his pen, and flames rose again. Life had changed forever, but cooking would continue. And somehow, through every dish he made, Jason knew his father would always be part of the recipe. And go to chapter 6. I'm gonna quick through because yeah, almost eight, you go to bed before the go to bed. So I will go kick through. Maybe it takes 15 minutes or yeah 1 hour, but we'll go. Moving forward, grief did not arrive all at once. Instead, it came in waves. Some morning, Jason woke up feeling almost normal, ready to step into the restaurant kitchen and began the day. The smell of garlic hitting hot oil would fill the room, and for a moment everything felt the way it always had. But then something small would remind him: the empty chair at the dinner table, the quiet absence of footsteps in the hallway, the memory of his father standing silently in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, watching him cook. And suddenly the weight returned. The restaurant reopened a few days after the funeral. Jason had thought about closing it for longer, but his mother gently reminded him that the kitchen had always been where he felt the strongest. You hear by doing what you love, she told him. So the doors of Kimura kitchen opened again. The bell above the door rang softly as the first customer stepped inside that afternoon. Jason stood in the kitchen, tying his apron. His hands paused for a moment. Then he took a deep breath and turned on the stove. The familiar whoosh of flame filled the room. The first few days were difficult. Jason moved through the kitchen almost automatically. Sliced vegetables, heat the pan, add garlic, stir, plate the food. His hands remembered everything, even when his mind felt foggy. Christian noticed it right away. One evening, she walked into the kitchen and watched him cook silently. "You are not talking," she said. Jason glanced at her. "What do you mean?" "You usually talk while you cook," she said. "You explain things. You taste everything 3 times." Jason shrugged. "I guess I'm just tired." Christine leaned against the counter. "You said." Um, Jason didn't answer. Christine didn't push him further. Instead, she grabbed a knife and began slicing green onions beside him. The quiet companionship helped more than words. David handled things differently, where Jason became quieter. Yeah, quieter. David became louder, quieter. Yeah. Every afternoon he practiced taekwondo in the alley behind the restaurant. Kick, punch, turn, kick again. The sounds echoed against the brick walls. One evening, Jason stepped outside during a break. David was practicing a spinning kick, sweat dripping down his forehead. "You are training a lot," Jason said. David stopped and wiped his face with his sleeve. "I have to get stronger." "For what?" David thought for a moment. "So I can protect everyone." Jason smiled slightly. "You already do that just by being here." David nodded seriously. Then he went back to practicing. Mia remained a steady presence through everything. She didn't try to fix things. She didn't offer big speeches. She simply showed up. Some evenings she helped organize ingredients in the kitchen. Other nights she sat at the counter testing new dishes. Jason experimented with. One evening, Jason served her a small bowl of soup. "What do you think?" he asked. Mia tasted it carefully. "It's good." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Just good?" She smiled slightly. "You are cooking differently." Jason frowned. "What do you mean?" Mia thought about her answer. "It tastes deeper," she said. Jason stirred the soup slowly. "Maybe." Mia watched him. "Your dad always pushed you to improve," she said gently. Jason nodded. "Yes." Mia leaned forward. "And you did." Weeks passed. Slowly the restaurant turned to its usual rhythm. Customers filled the tables again. The kitchen buzzed with activity, and Jason began experimenting with new dishes. One evening, he announced a new special. "Tonight, we're trying something new," he said to Christine and Mia. Christine looked up from the register that usually means chaos. Jason grinned. "Trust me." He heard the wok. Oil shimmered across the surface. Then he added a thin slice of chicken, ginger, and garlic. The aroma filled the room instantly. Next came colorful vegetables, red peppers, snow peas, carrots. But instead of his usual sauce, Jason poured in something new, a mixture of honey, soy, lime, and chili. The scent rising from the pan was sweet, sharp, and slightly smoky. Mia leaned closer. "That smells amazing!" And Jason plated the dish carefully. Christian tasted it first. Her eyes widened. "What?" David grabbed a piece. "That's the best thing you've made all year." Jason laughed. "Really?" Christian nodded. "You should put it on the menu." Jason thought about it. Then he smiled. I will. Later that night, after the restaurant closed, the family gathered for dinner. It had become a new tradition. Even when the restaurant was busy, they made time to sit together after closing. Jason brought out several dishes: a stir fry, dumplings, fresh sushi rolls, and the new honey lime chicken. And they ate slowly, talking laughing, remembering stories about their father. David demonstrated a new take on the move between bites. Christian teased him about knocking over the soy sauce butter. Mia laughed quietly at both of them. Jason looked around the table. For a moment, the sadness softened. Family filled the space where grief had been. After dinner, Jason stayed in the kitchen, cleaning the counters. The restaurant was quiet again. The soft glow of the lights reflected off the stainless steel surface. Jason picked up his father's old watch from the shelf. It, uh, it had been returned after the accident. Jason turned it over in his hands. He remembered the first time his father had watched him cook seriously, the small nod he had given, the silent approval. Jason placed the watch back on the shelf. Then he looked around the kitchen. This place held every part of his journey, his childhood dream, his struggles, his victories, and his loss. But it also held something else, hope. Jason turned off the lights and stepped outside. The night air was cool. David practiced one last kick before heading home. Christine locked the front door. Mia stood beside Jason on the sidewalk. "You okay?" she asked. Jason nodded slowly. "Yeah." He looked up at the restaurant sign glowing softly above them. "We're going to be all right." "All right." Mia smiled. "I know." Jason took one last look at the building, the place where his dream had grown. Then he walked home with his family beside him. And for the first time in many weeks, the future didn't feel so heavy. It felt possible. Chapter 7 was so funny. Yeah. The Christian moves to Canada. The restaurant was already away before the sun fully rose. Inside the Kimura kitchen, the air was warm with the smell of rice steaming and broth simmering slowly in a large pot near the stove. The quiet clatter of knives and the gentle hum of the refrigerator filled the room. Jason liked mornings like this. They were calm, peaceful, before the rush of customers, before the noise, before the pressure. He stood behind the counter slicing vegetables carefully, thin stripes of carrot, green onions, and red bell peppers arranged neatly on a cutting board. The rhythmic, rhythmic motion of the knife helped him think. Tap, 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 tap. Cooking had always been his way of understanding the world, but lately his thoughts had been distracted. Something was changing, and he knew it. Christine walked into the kitchen carrying a stack of papers. Her hair was tied back loosely, and she still looked slightly tired from studying late the night before. Morning, she said. Jason glanced up. Morning, she set the papers on the table and poured herself a glass of water. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Jason noticed the papers again. More applications? He asked. Christine nodded. Final ones. Jason kept chopping vegetables, but his stomach tightened slightly. Christine had been applying to colleges for months, some nearby, some farther away, and a few very far away. David burst into the kitchen moments later, nearly knocking over a chair. Jason, he spun dramatically and launched into a spinning kick in the middle of the room. Jason jumped back. Whoa! Christine laughed. Yeah, you are going to break something. Yeah, David landed proudly. I perfected the tornado kick. Jason raised an eyebrow. In the kitchen? Best, David. David nodded confidently. Best training space. Jason shook his head and returned to chopping vegetables, but David wasn't finished. I'm gonna to become a black belt someday, he declared. Christian smiled. I believe it. David puffed out his chest proudly. Jason smiled too. Their father had always believed strongly in discipline. David had taken that lesson to heart. Later that afternoon, the restaurant filled with customers. The lunch rush arrived in waves. Plates clattered, orders were shouted. The kitchen grew alive with movement. Jason moved quickly between the stove and prep table. Oil sizzled loudly in the wok as vegetables and chicken jumped across the hot pan. Garlic and ginger filled the air. Christine moved through the dining room, greeting customers and organizing orders with calm efficiency. David helped carry supplies in and out of the kitchen. Mia sat near the counter, occasionally stepping in to help organize the ingredients or taste a new sauce Jason was experimenting with. Everything felt balanced, comfortable, like the rhythm of a song everyone knew. But Jason noticed something. Christine seemed quieter than usual. Every time she checked her phone, her expression changed slightly, like she was waiting for something. That evening, after the restaurant closed, the family gathered around the long wooden table in the back. Jason had prepared a full meal, steaming bowls of rice, bowls of rice, fresh dumplings, tempura vegetables, and a new stir fry. He had been perfecting our week. Christian sat quietly. David bounced his knee under the table. Mia watched the room carefully. Jason noticed the tension immediately. What's going on? He asked. Christine took a deep breath. Then she looked up. I got the letter today. Jason froze. What letter? Christine slid the paper across the table. Jason picked it up. The words jumped out immediately. University of British Columbia. Jason blinked. Canada? Christine nodded slowly. They accepted me. Silence filled the room. David stopped moving. Jason stared at the letter again. Canada? That wasn't just far. That was another country you are leaving, he asked quietly. Christine tried to smile. It's a huge opportunity. Jason nodded slowly. I know, but the thought felt strange. Christine had always been part of the restaurant, part of the family routine, part of everything. David finally spoke. Oh, who's going to help me practice taekwondo? Christine laughed softly. You will still practice, but you won't be here. Christine reached across the table and squeezed his hand. I will still cheer for you. Their mother spoke gently from the other side of the table. This is a wonderful opportunity for Christian. Jason nodded again. I'm proud of you. And he meant it, but pride and sadness often arrived together. The next few weeks passed quickly. Christine began packing books, clothes, photos. Every box made the change feel more real. Just Jason stayed busy in the kitchen, partly because the restaurant needed him, partly because working kept his mind from wandering too much. But sometimes he caught himself watching Christine from across the room, remembering the countless times she had helped him, the late nights preparing ingredients, the early mornings opening the restaurant, the way she always kept everything organized that when Jason's cooking experiments created chaos. She had been part of the dream from the beginning. David tried to help with the packing. Unfortunately, his version of helping mostly involved stacking boxes in extremely unstable towers. At one point, a pile of books collapsed across the floor. Christine laughed. You are terrible at packing. You are terrible. Davis shrugged. I'm better at kicking things. Jason smiled from the doorway. Please don't kick the boxes. Mia counted visiting open. One afternoon, she found Jason sitting quietly at the prep table, starting at the recipe notebook. You okay? She asked. Jason nodded slowly. Yeah, Mia said beside him. You are worried about Christine leaving? Jason sighed. She helped build this place. Mia looked around the restaurant. You built it too. Jason shook his head. Not alone. Mia smiled gently. You are not alone now either. The morning Kristen left arrived sooner than anyone expected. The suitcase waited by the door. The car stood ready outside. The restaurant was quiet. Jason helped carry the last bag to the trunk. Kristen hugged their mother first. Then David stood stiffly, trying very hard not to cry, trying hard. Kristen said, I will. Finally, she turned to Jason. They stood there for a moment, neither speaking. Then Christine hugged him tightly. Take care of the restaurant. Jason nodded. I will. She stepped back. And take care of yourself too. Jason managed a small smile. I'll try. Mia stood nearby, watching quietly. When Christine climbed into the car, the moment suddenly felt real. The engine started, the car rolled down the street, and then she was gone. The restaurant felt different that night, quieter. Jason moved slowly through the kitchen preparing dinner. The dishes tasted good, but something felt missing. David practiced outside longer than usual. Their mother worked silently at the prep table. Mia helped organize the ingredients. And finally, Jason finished plating the last dish. He looked around the kitchen. Christine's usual spot near the register was empty. Jason wiped his hands on his apron, and life had changed again. But the restaurant still stood. The kitchen still smelled like garlic and ginger, and the people who remained still believed in the dream. Jason took a deep breath. Then he turned back to the stove, because sometimes the best way to move forward was simply to keep cooking. And the chapter 8, Heat Pressure and the Cost of a Dream. After Christine left for Canada, the restaurant changed in ways Jason had not expected. At first, the difference felt small. Her chair at the back table was empty during family meals. The stack of order slips near the register sat slightly crooked because no one else lined them up the way she did. A box of tea in the party stayed in the wrong place for 3 days because Christine was not there to move it back. Little things, a small absence, had a way of growing. Within a week, Jason understood just how much his sisters had been holding together. She had remembered the supplier course. She had checked the daily inventory. She had noticed when a sauce was running low before anyone else did. She had known exactly which customer was allergic to peanuts, which regular wanted extra ginger, and which elderly couple always spilled one bowl of soup and one plate of dumplings. Without her, the restaurant still ran, but it no longer ran smoothly. It stumbled. And Jason, for the first time, felt the full weight of carrying a dream. The Monday after Christian left began badly. Jason woke up late, not by much, but only 20 minutes. But in a kitchen, 20 minutes could feel like an hour. By the time he rushed downstairs, his mother had already set water to boil, and David was halfway through breakfast, practicing slow punches in his chair between bites of toast. "You overslept," David said. Jason gave him a tired look. "Thank you for the update." David nodded solemnly. "You're welcome." Mia arrived 10 minutes later, carrying a paper bag from the bakery down the street. I brought bread," she said. Then she looked at Jason's face. "You look terrible." "Thanks again," Jason muttered. "No, I mean tired, terrible," Mia said. "Not ugly, terrible." David nearly choked, laughing. Jason grabbed an apron and tied it too quickly. Nothing on and wrong. He had to start over. Mia watched him. You are rushing. "I know I'm rushing." "You are also annoyed." "I know that too." Mia set the bread down, then breathed. Jason stopped for half a second. He hated when she was right so quickly. He inhaled slowly, let the breath out, and looked around the kitchen. The counters, the prep bowls, the notepad with today's menu changes, the crates of vegetables by the back door. The restaurant did not need panic, it needed order. And that started with him. By lunchtime, the dining room was nearly full. Steam clouded the pass-through window between the kitchen and the floor. Orders stacked beside the register. A server called for 2 bowls of tom yum and tempura platters, 3 stir fries, and a sushi combo with no avocado. Jason moved quickly from station to station. Oil hissed in the wok. Broth bubbled in heavy silver pots. Rice steamed. Knives flashed against the cutting board. For an hour, he forgot everything except movement. Then he heard his mother's voice from the front. "Jason." Something in her tone made him turn immediately. She stood beside the register holding a thin stack of papers. "Bills." Jason knew the look of them. He turned the flame down beneath the stirring fry pan and walked over. "What is it?" His mother lowered her voice. The refrigeration repair invoice came. Jason stared at the paper. The walk-in refrigerator had been acting strangely the past week, sometimes running too warm, sometimes making a hard, rattling sound late at night. Jason had called for a repair because he couldn't risk meat or seafood spoiling. Now he saw the total and his stomach tightened. It was far more than he had hoped. How much cash do we have after rent and payroll this week? He asked. His mother hesitated. Not enough to be comfortable. Jason read the invoice again as if the number might somehow shrink. It didn't. It did not. Behind him, a pan began to smoke. Mia called from the stove. He spun around and ran back, grabbing the wok just in time. The peppers had charred darker than he wanted, not ruined but close. He salvaged the dish, replated it, and sent it down. Even so, his heartbeat did not settle. The beer remained folded in his apron pocket for the rest of the day, heavy as stone. That night, after closing, the family sat at the back table with notebooks, recipes, and calculator. David hated numbers almost as much as he loved taekwondo, but even he understood this was not one of the nights to joke around. Jason wrote down the week's expenses in neat columns: produce, meat, rice, soy sauce, cooking oil, utilities, repairs. The more he wrote, the quieter he became. Mia leaned over the table and looked at the list. We can cut something temporarily. Temporarily, Jason rubbed his forehead. Like what? Dessert specials. Dessert specials, she said. Jason shook his head. Desserts actually make decent margin. Okay, fewer seafood specials, maybe. Their mother pointed to another number. What about reducing lunch portions slightly? Jason frowned. Customers noticed that. David, who had been staring at the page upside down, suddenly pointed to the takeout box section. What about making more money instead of cutting everything? Jason looked at him. That's the dream. Yes. No, seriously. David said, why don't you do one of those special events? What kind of special events? David sat up straighter, now fully convinced he was on to genius, like a tournament. Jason blinked. For food? David shrugged. Why not? Mia smiled slowly. Actually, everyone turned to her. She lifted one shoulder. A themed dinner night could work. Jason leaned back. He had been so focused on survival that he had forgotten to think creativity. What kind of theme? Mia tapped the table. A chef's tasting night, limited seats, a special menu, something you don't usually serve. Their mother nodded thoroughly. People would come for that. Jason's mind began moving faster. A special menu, higher price point, a chance to show skill, a chance to bring in more business. For the first time that night, the hope pushed back against worry. David grinned. See, tournament? Jason laughed despite himself. Fine, he said. Food tournament? David folded his arms proudly. I should be in charge of strategy. No, Jason and Mia said together. The next 2 weeks were some of the hardest Jason had ever worked. By day, he ran the restaurant as usual. By night, he planned the tasting dinner. He wanted the menu to feel personal, as if each course told a piece of the story he had been living, not in words, in flavors. He stayed up sketching dishes in his old notebook, the same kind of notebook he had used as a kid when he was grounded from the kitchen and only allowed to imagine food. Now the the pages filled with more complicated ideas. A first course built around the memory and comfort. A soup with bright citrus, herbs, and warmth. A second course inspired by struggle and balance. Handmade dumplings with delicate force and a filling that mixed sweetness with heat. A main course that had to be worthy of the restaurant's name. A stir fry unlike anything on the regular menu, not louder, not fancier, just more exact, more him. One night Mia found him asleep at the prep table, head resting on open pages covered in sauce, notes, and ingredient lists. She gently slid the pencil from his hand. Jason, he jerked awake. What? He is the stove on fire? What? No. Did we miss inventory? No. Is David doing spinning kicks in the pantry again? Pause. Not right now, Mia said. Jason rubbed his eyes. What time is it? Yeah, too late. He looked down at his notebook. I'm close. You are exhausted. I know. Mia leaned against the counter. Then listen to me. He looked up. You don't have to prove anything at all at once, she said. Jason gave a tired half smile. That sounds wise. It is wise. It also sounds like something someone says when they are not the one whose repair gear is trying to kill them. Mia softened. I know you are scared. Jason's smile faded. He looked down at the notebook again. Sometimes it feels like if I make one wrong move, everything falls apart. The room was quiet. Then Mia said, You know what I think? Jason did not answer, but she continued anyway. I think you've spent so much time being strong for everyone else that you've forgotten strength can look different. She tapped the notebook. This is strength too, and planning, caring, building something instead of giving up. Jason started at the page for a long moment, then he nodded once. Stay for one more testing. Mia smiled. Obviously, while Jason paused to steady the restaurant, David threw himself into taekwondo with even greater intensity. He was no longer just practicing in the alley after school. He had been selected to compete in a regional tournament. The announcement came on a Thursday evening when he burst through the back door of the restaurant, waving a ladder over his head. I got in. Jason was plating dumplings and nearly dropped on. Into what? The regional qualifiers. David spun in a quick circle and accidentally kicked a chair. Their mother caught the ladder before it fell to the floor. She read it, and her face brightened. Oh, David! Christian would have screamed, Jason thought. Then he remembered she was thousands of miles away, and that strange ache returned for a moment. But David grabbed him by both shoulders. Say something. Yeah, Jason laughed. That's amazing. David's whole face lit up. I know, you sound very humble. I'm trying to be realistic, David said. Mia, the deadpanned, deadpanned from the corner. That's not the word I'd choose. But Jason watched his brother more carefully that night. David's excitement was real. So was the pressure under it. Later, after dinner, Jason found him outside practicing forms in the dark under the yellow backlight. Yellow back yellow backlight. You should rest, Jason said. David kept moving. If I rest, someone else trains harder. Jason leaned against the wall. That sounds familiar. David stopped. You used to say stuff like that? No, Jason said, but I used to live it. David wiped the sweat from his forehead. This matters. I know it does. David looked away. I want to win. Jason nodded slowly. Then train, but don't let winning become the only reason you are doing it. David frowned. What else is there? Jason thought of the kitchen, of his childhood notebook, of the first time food made him feel like the world was opening instead of closing. Then he said, the part of it that belongs to you, but the part you'd still love, even if no one was watching. David was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at his own hands. I'd love it. Jason smiled. Good kid, that part. The testing dinner sold out in 3 days. Jason could hardly believe it. Mia had designed simple flyers and posted them in nearby shops. Their mother had called regulars she knew would be interested. A teacher from the school had told a friend who told someone else, and by the end of the week, every seat was gone. 24 guests, one special, one special menu, one chance. The entire restaurant felt different that morning. Focused, electric. Jason arrived before sunrise to begin prep. He sharpened the knives, washed the herbs, trimmed the vegetables, checked fish quality twice, marinated meat, tasted broth, wrote order the order of 2 courses because the pacing of the meal felt wrong in his head. By noon, every surface held careful rows of ingredients. Mia walked in and stopped in the doorway. Wow, Jason did not look up. We are behind. No, you're not. You are just in chef madness mode. I prefer highly calibrated. She smiled and picked up an apron. By late afternoon, David had finished helping set tables and was polishing glasses with such dramatic seriousness and that even their mother laughed. Those are already clean, she told it. I'm preparing them mentally. David replied. Their mother shook her head. That makes no sense. It doesn't have to, David said. An hour before guests arrived, disaster almost struck. Jason was reducing a sauce on the back burner when the gas flame sputtered strangely and went low. He turned the knob up. Nothing. He checked another burner. Weak, then weaker. His heart lurched. Mom, she came quickly. The gas pressure's off, he said. Mia looked over from the prep table. What does that mean? It means if this line fails during service, we're done. Yeah, silence. Jason crouched and checked the connection under the range with hands that suddenly felt too large, too clumsy. Please, not tonight, he thought, please. David, sensing the tension, stopped joking entirely. What do you need? Call the emergency number tapped by the phone, Jason said. David ran. Their mother moved to the stock pot, checking what could still be finished while they had hit. Mia stepped beside Jason. Talk to me. If the main line drops completely, I lose my burners. Can the dinner still happen? Jason exhaled hard. Not the way I planned. Mia's voice stayed steady, then adapt. He looked up at her. She repeated adapt, and suddenly he heard his father in the word. Discipline matters more, not because discipline kills dreams, because discipline keeps them alive when things go wrong. Jason stood up. Okay, he said. His mind shifted, not panic, plan. He pointed quickly. Move the dumplings steaming to the secondary burner. Finish the soup base now while we still have pressure. Shift the sear coals to the oven. We will hold the final glaze until the last minute. His mother was already moving. Mia grabbed trays. David returned breathless. They said they can't get here for at least an hour. Yeah, Jason nodded once. Then we don't need them for the first hour. He rolled his shoulders back and tied his apron tighter. Let's cook. The guests arrived to candlelight, soft music, and the smell of citrus broth and toasted sesame. As yeah, sesame. Most of them had never seen Jason do this kind of dinner before. They entered with curiously and the special kind of quiet excitement people carry when they know they are about to experience something limited, something they almost missed. Jason stood in the kitchen doorway before service began and looked out at the room. The tables were full. The lantern lights glowed. David somehow had transformed from chaos creature into serious host, escorting guests with intense politeness. Mia adjusted the menu cards one last time. Their mother straightened a vase of small white flowers at the front. Jason closed his eyes for half a second. Then he began. The first course went out smoothly, a bright broth with shrimp, herbs, and lime, warm and fragrant, fragrant enough to open the appetite without overwhelming it. The second course followed dumplings with thin, delicate skins. Their filling rich and balanced, finished with chili, crisp, and green onion. By the third course, the room had changed. People were no longer just eating. They were leaning forward, talking softly, pausing between bites, paying attention. Jason felt it from the kitchen, the attention, the pleasure, the trust. The final main course came together under pressure, the weakened gas line forcing him to time every moment exactly. The stir fry hit the pan with a sound he had loved since childhood, and for a moment all the fear of the past month burned off in the heat rising around him. He plated the dish himself, every plate. Bell peppers glossy but not soggy. Chicken tender sauce balanced perfectly between sweet, savory, and sharp. A final scatter of herbs. When the place returned nearly empty, Jason let himself feel something dangerous, relief, and then something even more dangerous, belief. At the end of the night, one of the guests, the owner of a small food magazine from the next town over, asked if she could speak to the chef. Jason wiped his hands and came out from the kitchen. She stood smiling. "You're Jason Kimura?" "Yes." She held up the menu card. This was one of the, wow, it's long. Yeah, she held up the menu card. This was one of the most thoughtful meals I've had in a long time. Jason blinked. "Thank you. I'd love to feature your restaurant in our spring issue." For a second, he thought he had misheard her. "Feature us?" "Well," she nodded. "There's a heart in what you are doing here. People should know about it." Jason glanced instinctively toward the kitchen, toward his family, toward Mia. Everything in him wanted to laugh, cry, and run back to the stove all at once. Instead, he said, "That would be an honor." She smiled. "Good, then expect my call." After the last guest left, the restaurant fell into the beautiful kind of silence that comes only after hard work has been worth it. Not empty silence, earned silence. David collapsed dramatically across two chairs. "I hosted too hard." Their mother laughed softly as she stacked plates. Mia sat on the counter and swung on foot. "You did it," she said. Jason leaned both hands on the prep table and looked around. "Yeah." And the room was messy. The counters were streaked with the sauce. A towel lay on the floor, floor near the oven. Someone had left one menu card upside down. It was not perfect, but it was alive and it had worked. Their mother came over to hand out the neighbors' recipes. Jason took them. He did the numbers quickly, hardly trusting them. Then he looked up. Where? Mia asked. Jason swallowed. We covered the repair bill. David said, seriously? Jason nodded, and a laugh broke out of him before he could stop it. Yes. Their mother covered her mouth with one hand, eyes bright. David threw both fists into the air. I told you, tournament. Jason laughed harder. You are never going to let that go, are you? Absolutely not. Mia slid off the counter and stepped closer. Oh, and the article? Jason looked at her. We might actually be okay. She smiled, but her voice was softer than the others. I know. Later that night, after the dishes were done and the lights were lowered, Jason stood alone for a minute in the center of the dining room. The restaurant smelled like garlic, citrus, and cooling matter. The chairs were pushed in. The lanterns glowed low. Outside, the street was quiet. He thought of Christine in Canada, too far away to be there physically, yet still woven into everything they had built. He thought of David, who was learning that strength was not only in force but in discipline. He thought of his mother, who held the edges of the family together so gently that sometimes no one noticed how much she carried. He thought of Mia, whose presence had become as steady as flame beneath a pan, and he thought of his father, of strictness, of silence, of impossible standards that no longer felt like words but like tools he was slowly learning how to use. Jason looked up at the sign reflected faintly in the front window. Kimura Kitchen, a small-time restaurant, maybe a fragile dream, definitely, but still standing, still growing, still his. He reached over, turned off the last night, and whispered into the dark, we are not done yet. Then he locked the door and went home. The week of Davis' tournament arrived only 3 days later. He tried to act normal. He failed completely at breakfast. He shadow kicked beside the table. At lunch, he bounced his knee so hard the salt shaker rattled. That evening he stood in the alley behind the restaurant practicing the same combination over and over, jaw tight with concentration. Jason watched for a while, then he stepped into the alley. Again, David did not stop moving. I missed the turn. Looked fine to me. It wasn't. Jason folded his arms. You know what happens when you chase perfect too hard? David slowed. What? You stop seeing was already strong. David wiped the sweat from his forehead. Easy for you to say. Jason almost laughed. No, he said quietly. Actually, it's not. David looked at him. Then, for a moment, neither of them was joking. Then Jason stepped forward and held up a hand. Show me the combination. You don't know taekwondo. I know pressure. David started at him. Then, with a reluctant grin, he reset his stance. And this time, when he moved, Jason saw not just speed or ambition. He saw care. He saw hunger. He saw the same stubborn fire that once made a little boy stand on a stool and believe a kitchen could become alive. Jason smiled. Again, he said, and David did. This was the season of their lives when everything seemed to happen at once. The restaurant was surviving. The dream was still expensive. The future was uncertain. Their family was stretched across countries, across grief, across growing responsibilities, and yet, in the middle of all of it, something stronger than fear was taking shape. Not success exactly, not yet, something steadier, endurance, the kind built in in hot kitchens, late nights, quiet acts of support, and the decision to return tomorrow to no matter how hard today had been. Jason did not know what the next year would bring. More beers, probably, more mistakes, more work, more maybe recognition, maybe failure, maybe both. But for the first time since Christine had left, he no longer felt like change only meant loss. Sometimes change also meant becoming, and that night, as the scent of ginger and soy still lingered in his clothes, and David practiced one final kick under the LI light, Jason understood that their story was still being cooked slowly, imperfectly over real heat, and maybe that was what made it good. Yeah, and chapter 9, last one. The next chapter of the dream. By the time Jason was 24, the restaurant no longer felt like a fragile experiment. It had become something real, not perfect, not effortless, but alive. The sign outside the Kimura kitchen glowed warmly each evening as customers gathered inside. Some had been coming for years now. They knew exactly where they liked to sit. They knew which dishes Jason cooked best, and they often asked if he was in the kitchen that night. The restaurant had grown slowly, carefully, one improvement at a time: a better stove, stronger ventilation, new tables that didn't wobble when someone leaned too hard on them. Each change had taken time and money, but together they turned the small restaurant into something that felt established, something stable, something Jason could finally breathe inside. The kitchen buzzed that evening with the familiar rhythm of dinner service. Oil sizzled loudly in the wok as Jason tossed vegetables and chicken through a cloud of steam. The scent of ginger and garlic filled the room, drifting through the open pass window into the dining area. Two dumplings ready? Jason called. Christine appeared beside the counter immediately. Got them. Got them. She moved confidently now, weaving between tables with the ease of someone who had spent years understanding exactly how the restaurant worked. After finishing college in Canada, Christine had returned home. At first, she had planned to stay only a few months, but the restaurant had a way of pulling people in. Soon she found herself reorganizing the supply orders, redesigning parts of the menu layout, and helping Jason manage the flow of customers. Jason joked that she had becoming the restaurant's unofficial general manager. Christian prepared the term, the one who keeps everything from collapsing, the one who keeps everything from collapsing. David was different now too. At 19, he had grown taller than Jason, and his shoulders had widened from years of taekwondo training. His movements were still energetic, but there was more control in them now. He helped with deliveries during busy evening and sometimes greeted customers at the door, but most of his focus had turned toward the next stage of his life, college. The acceptance letter sat on the kitchen bulletin board, held up by a manager shaped like a dumpling. David stared at it often, not nervously, more like someone studying the entrance to a new arena. That night, the restaurant filled quickly. Within 30 minutes, every table was occupied. A couple celebrating their anniversary shared a plate of tempura. Two college students sat near the window, splitting a bowl of tom yum soup and arguing about which dumpling filling was best. A family with two young kids laughed loudly near the bag as the children tried to use chopsticks for the first time. Jason glanced out at the dining room between others. Moments like this still amazed him. Years ago, he had been a boy cooking on a stool in his parents' kitchen. Now, an entire room of people shared food he had created. The thought still felt surreal. Mia sat at the corner counter testing a new sauce Jason had been experimenting with, and she dipped a spoon into the small bowl and tried it carefully. Jason watched her expression from across the counter. Where? He asked. Mia tilted her head thoughtfully. It's close. Jason groaned. You always say that because it's always close. Mia replied. Jason walked over and tasted the sauce himself. Sweet, savory, but something was missing. More activity, more acidity, Mia said. Jason added a small squeeze of lime. They tasted it again. Jason's eyebrows lifted. Okay, now it's good, Mia smiled. I know their partnership in the kitchen had grown naturally over the years. Mia never claimed to be a chef, but she had developed an incredible instinct of flavors and balance. Jason trusted her opinion more than almost anyone. Later that evening, after the dinner rush began to slow, the family gathered briefly at the back table. Their mother sat quietly with a cup of tea, watching the restaurant with calm pride. You, you've all grown so much, she said softly. Jason wiped his hands on a towel and sat down. Feels like everything happened so fast. Christine nodded. But it also feels like we've been here forever. David leaned back in his chair. Not forever, he said. Just the beginning. And Jason smiled at that. The beginning. For a long time, the restaurateur had felt like a fragile dream that could disappear if he made one wrong decision. But now something had shifted. It felt stronger, like roots finally setting into the ground. After closing time, the restaurant fell into its familiar nighttime quiet. The lantern lights dimmed, chairs were stacked, the smell of cooking lingered softly in the air. Jason stood alone in the kitchen for a moment. He looked around slowly, the stove, the cutting boards, the notebook filled with years of recipes. Every corner held a memory. The first dish he had served, the night the gas line almost failed, the tasting dinner that saved the restaurant, the moment Christian returned from Canada, the countless evening Mia had spent helping him test new ideas, and always, somewhere in the background of those memories, his father. Jason something imagined his father standing in the doorway again, watching quietly, not criticizing, not interrupting, just observing. Jason hoped that if that moment were real, his father would nod the way he had during the cooking contest years ago. That small nod had meant more than 1,000 words. Jason turned off the stove and wiped down the counter. Behind him, the restaurant door opened. Christine stepped inside. You are still working? Jason smiled. Always, always. Christine leaned against the doorway. You know something? What? You actually did it. Wow. Jason looked around the kitchen again, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to believe it. The restaurant was no longer just a dream, it was a life. Yeah, and though the road ahead still held unknown challenges, Jason felt ready for them because he knew something now that he hadn't understood as a child. Dreams weren't built in one moment. Wow, they were built slowly, dish by dish, day by day, with the patience, with the courage, and with the people who stood beside you while the fire burned. Wow, so beautiful, beautiful story here. Wow, the read it almost 1 hour more, and then I put together 2 hours. The include the epilogue. The rest of it that continues. The restaurant was quiet in the early morning. Sunlight slipped through the front windows of Kimura kitchen, stretching long golden lines across the wooden tables. The chairs were still neatly tucked in, and the kitchen counters shone after the careful cleaning from the night before. Jason stood alone near the stove. The restaurant always felt different before opening, calmer, like a deep breath before a long day. He tied his apron slowly and began preparing ingredients for the morning. Rice washed in a bowl, vegetables sliced into careful stripes, broth simmering gently in a large pot. The familiar sounds of cooking filled the room. They had once felt exciting and new. Now they felt steady, comforting, like the rhythm of a heartbeat. The bell above the door rang softly. Jason looked up. David walked in carrying a Jim back over one shoulder. He had returned home for a short break from college. You are already cooking? David asked. Jason smiled. You know me. David stretched his arms. I miss this place. Jason handed him a cutting board, then started chopping. David laughed. Fine. They walked side by side for a few minutes. David wasn't as precise with the knife, but his movements were strong and competent. Years of taekwondo had given him balance and discipline. You still training? Jason asked. Every day, David replied. Jason nodded. Their father would have liked that. A little later, the front door opened again. Christine stepped inside carrying a clipboard. Morning, she said. Jason grinned. Manager's here. Christine rolled her eyes. Someone has to keep things organized. She walked around the restaurant, adjusting chairs and checking supplies with practiced efficiency. The restaurant had grown steadily over the years. It was still small, still warm, still personal, but it had become a place the community depended on. People came not only for the food, they came for the feeling, the comfort, the stories shared around the tables. The final person to arrive that morning was Mia. She pushed the door open with one hand and carried a small bag of fresh herbs. Delivery, she announced. Jason laughed. You don't work here, Mia said. Herbs on the counter. I know, but I still help. Jason picked up a leaf and smelled it. Fresh basil. Perfect. You always help, he said. Mia smiled. That's what friends do. Soon the restaurant filled with the sounds of preparation. Pans eating, knives chopping, rice steaming, the familiar orchestra of the kitchen. Jason stood in the center of it all. Years ago, he had been a boy standing on a stool in a small family kitchen. Back then, cooking had simply been something he loved. Now, it was something larger, something that connected people, something that carried memories. Later that evening, after the restaurant had closed, the family gathered for dinner at the same long table in the back. It had become a tradition they never skipped. Jason placed the final dish in the center, a new version of his stir fry. Sweet, savory, balanced, everyone began eating. Christine talked about new ideas for expanding the restaurant someday. David described the taekwondo tournament he hoped to enter. Their mother listened with a quiet smile, and Mia laughed softly at one of David's exaggerated stories. Jason watched them all. The restaurant was warm. The air smelled like ginger and garlic, and for a moment he could almost imagine another figure standing quietly in the kitchen, his father watching. And Jason hoped that if that moment were real, his father would give the same small nod he had